We are back here now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to give more of a broader addressing to this, to just more than football. And it stems from football, so I wanted to bring it up on today's show because I thought it was pretty fascinating when Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski was asked in a Tuesday radio interview with 92.3 The Fan about Patrick Mahomes, behind the back pass, and, just his overall thoughts on seeing something like that so ridiculous and just even trying something like that where, you look back a decade ago or a decade or so ago and that would have been it for anybody to try anything like that, right? But Kevin Stefanski on Patrick Mahomes, he said, it's funny. It's almost like, how Steph Curry changed basketball. I think Mahomes is changing football. You watch quarterbacks come out and play that style. They comport themselves like him. So I would not be surprised if you started seeing that around. Certainly our league. You're going to see kids in high school trying it as well. And, that sparked just my thinking, my overall approach to this topic that I wanted to bring, and just thinking about not just Patrick Mahomes, but highlighting some of the other very influential, very generational type of athletes that we are very much blessed with seeing day in and day out on, TV nowadays, and just every sport. It seems like we have the chance to see these generational type of athletes, and I wanted to just share it on today's segment and kind of give them their flowers a little bit here and just talk about their influence in today's sporting world. And we were going to get through it. We're going to cycle through some of these pictures here and also talking about Patrick Mahomes and the NFL first and foremost, just because, Patrick Mahomes, it goes without saying, the unorthodox style, the dominance on in just the league overall, the accolades, personal accolades, and all the Super Bowls that he's won already, and just tugging that line between what's acceptable, how much of it is just talent, and just how much of it does he actually practice and things like that. I think that's a huge part of it, continuing that dominance and shaping what the quarterback position is nowadays, especially how he plays it, fearless, tugging that line like I mentioned before. It seems like coaches are now allowing it a bit more and allowing players to be a little bit more creative, which is a great thing. And speaking on creativity, you guys just saw him on the screen. Lamar Jackson is one of the most unbelievable, talented guys that you see from the quarterback spot, just because he is so unique and unusual to that spot and that position. To see a guy be able to run like that, you haven't really seen it since Michael Vick, but he's taking it to a whole another level, really, and just bringing a lot of attention to just the running style of the quarterback. And obviously he's gotten better as a passer, but also he's changing the view on the quarterback position. Teams now are more accepting of having a quarterback like that on their team. They're more, just willing to build their team around that and have a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, command that offense and how electrifying he is, game-changing. He's changing how defenses shape their entire game plan just around him, not just passing it, obviously, but running it and adding a whole nother dimension to their game plan is something that not a lot of people before him or even currently in the NFL say that they have that effect on their overall league. So those two are the biggest ones, in my opinion, in the NFL. And then you look at basketball, just like you see on your screen, starting with Steph Curry, because that's who Kevin Stefanski mentioned. He has shaped this entire revolution, right? The three-point revolution. Have to have it now. You have to be able to shoot the three-pointer, at least if you're going to be a starter out there. You're maybe not necessarily shoot it if you're a big man, if you're a traditional big man, but affect the game in a way that you open up three-point shooting and, you're just putting them up at this point. Teams in the NBA now aren't really going to be successful if they're not chucking up a good amount of threes each and every game, because that's how Steph Curry has shaped this entire thing. And now you see how he has affected the spacing on the court, being able to defend. You have to have great wing defenders on your team in your starting lineup now, or else you really don't have a chance out there on the perimeter with the talent that all these young players are coming into the NBA with. And it kind of has decreased the value of that old school big that dominates the paint and everything like that, just because it's simply math. You just outscore them with threes. If you're very efficient at it, like the Boston Celtics, really, it's hard to keep up, obviously, and it has decreased the value of a traditional big. And Steph Curry was really at the origin of all of that. And to continue on with the NBA, two other guys stood out to me mostly, talking about old school bigs and generational type of players like that. Nikola Jokic is another one to me, and Wemby, of course. I'll just mention him in here now as well, just because both of them have brought in the international presence, I think, to the NBA. They've grown it. It has exploded just over the course of the last few years. You look at Wemby, Jokic, I could have mentioned Giannis as well, the Canadian players that we have, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, and things like that, and just other up-and-coming. There was a lot of international players just in this year's draft as well, so how much they've grown and how much they've been successful is a huge part of being one of these influential players. The levels that they are right now. You just look at the Olympics that just have passed and how it has changed over the last few years, how influential those guys have been in really revolutionizing the growth of the game. And I think the spotlight on the game in a lot of these European leagues as well. And in terms of playing style, you look at Wemby, the prototypical new age big man that you want to have. He has the size, the handle, the shooting, everything you would want in a franchise player like that. Teams will have to adapt everything that they do once he really fits into that full mold, his full potential in a few years. It's scary to think that he's only been in the league for 1 year, and he had a very great year, a very good year for just being a rookie. So what's he going to be like in 5 years is going to be super scary for these other teams. And then Nikola Jokic just still keeping that old school big around a little bit, but he brings more to the game because he also influences the three-point shooting as well. And just everything else he has in his bag, like the mid-range shot, the passing, his size, obviously. He's able to shoot the three ball as well, the IQ, all of that being, not the most athletic guy out there. It's incredible to see it with his size and everything like that, how he plays at his own pace, and how he controls everything from that center position. It's refreshing to see, not just a bunch of wing guys out there still having some value. Keeping the old school big around, living in Nikola Jokic is great to see. And then, just lastly here, with a couple more, with Shohei Ohtani's another one, growing the international influence in baseball and the dominance, obviously, in the stats that he has shown. One of the biggest stars in the sport, not just in recent memory. When you think of the superstars in the MLB, Shohei is one of the first names you bring up, especially when he was pitching too. How he could dominate a game, pitching a shutout game, and also just hitting a couple home runs, getting a couple hits on top of that. We haven't really seen a guy to do something like that. So the fact that he's bringing more eyeballs to the game from that spot, hopefully he gets more back into pitching and gets over that arm injury. Hopefully it all plays out a little bit better to allow him to get back into pitching. But Shohei is one of those guys that you think, coming into the MLB, seamless transition and just taking it over in his own stride, which is great to see. And then lastly, I couldn't go without mentioning the women in sports that we see today as well. Arguably one of the biggest one, Caitlin Clark, in the WNBA, and just overall that entire draft class, with Angel Reese being another one leading that class. Really, I think with the WNBA especially, and how, there's that whole big topic of, not valuing the other superstars that were there before Caitlin. I think to me what makes this so big is that the arrival of this draft class with Caitlin Clark, spearheading this class, is that it matched up perfectly with the trajectory that the WNBA was sort of heading into, if that makes sense, right? You had players like Asia Wilson, Diana Taurasi, and Breanna Stewart growing the game slowly in the WNBA, but then it matched up perfectly. The paths crossed perfectly with Caitlin Clark also joining the WNBA from Iowa, and all the success that they had in college as well. The entire draft class, it was must-see TV a lot of the times, and once you get to know them in college, of course you're going to follow them into the league as well, and it just matched up perfectly. That's why I believe, you see this explosion now of the WNBA and wanting to see these players on top of their obviously natural ability and how good they are at their sport. You mentioned them. In soccer, I think is another big one, just seeing the Olympics and how they played out as well. Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith leading the U.S. women's national team to the gold and really leading this new age of soccer, women's soccer in the U.S., and getting back to the dominance that everybody wants to see in the United States, because they had an early exit from the last World Cup, and now with Rodman, with Smith, and a bunch of other players, obviously, I'm not mentioning, those two are really the ones that will be the leaders, the most important players going forward to lead this new age of American soccer for the women's national team. And they've already had early success. They're both very young. And to lead this new age, I think they are going to shape a whole era around themselves and around, attention, bringing more eyes to women's soccer as well. So that's pretty much everybody I wanted to mention. It just sparked my thinking of, there's a lot of influential players nowadays, and we're very lucky to see a bunch of them play in a bunch of different sports as well to keep it interesting. So it's not just in the fall or in the spring that you get to see a lot of this great gameplay. It's year round, so that's what makes it so great overall, and what makes sports so great overall, honestly, right? But that's pretty much it. Those are all the athletes that really came to mind talking about influence in each of their respected sports. But sticking now more to football specifically, we have one more topic to mention here on today's show. A quick injury update on Saquon Barkley, Deshaun Watson, and a couple other superstars before we close out today's show. That is coming up right after this break.